What if the very thing we celebrate as progress is quietly undoing us? What if comfort, convenience, and ease, things we chase every day, are not signs of a better life, but reasons the human spirit feels weaker, restless, and unsatisfied? We live in the most comfortable age in history, yet anxiety is everywhere. Patience is rare, and meaning feels harder to hold than ever before. Something does not add up. There was a time when life offered no guarantees of ease, no instant relief from pain, no shortcuts around effort. And yet, people endured. They built families that lasted, communities that held together, and inner strength that did not collapse under pressure. They lived without comfort, but they were not broken by life. In many ways, they were steadier than we are now. Modern life removed resistance and promised freedom. It promised happiness through ease, security through convenience, and peace through comfort. But instead of producing strength, it produced fragility. Instead of clarity, it created confusion. Instead of deep satisfaction, it left many feeling restless, anxious, and strangely empty, despite having more than any generation before. This is not about glorifying suffering or rejecting progress. It is about recognizing a truth we rarely admit. Human beings are shaped by what they endure, not by what they avoid. When life stops demanding patience, discipline, and responsibility, something inside us weakens quietly. We become unprepared for struggle, dependent on ease, and unsettled when discomfort appears. If you have ever felt overwhelmed by small problems, exhausted without heavy labor, lonely despite constant connection, or empty despite endless comfort, this is not a personal failure. It is a cultural one. We built a world that removed pressure, and in doing so, removed the training ground for strength. To understand why earlier lives held together without comfort, we must first be willing to question whether comfort was ever meant to carry the weight we placed upon it. Hardship built inner strength. Medieval people opened their eyes each morning, knowing that the day would demand something from them. Life was not designed to be soft, and no one promised them ease. Work was physical, weather was unpredictable, illness had no quick cure, and food depended on effort. These conditions were not seen as punishment or failure. They were simply reality. Because of this, people did not waste energy complaining about difficulty. Their minds were trained to accept it and move forward. From a very young age, individuals learned how to carry weight. Children watched adults work, struggle, and continue without drama. Strength was not taught through speeches or motivation. It was learned through daily exposure to responsibility. When something went wrong, people adjusted instead of collapsing. Pain did not shock them because hardship was already built into their expectations. Today, life is designed to reduce discomfort at every level. Machines replace effort. Systems remove waiting. Entertainment distracts from silence. Because of this, many people grow up without ever training their ability to endure. When difficulty appears, it feels like a violation instead of a challenge. Small problems feel heavy, delays feel unbearable, and emotional pressure feels overwhelming because the mind was never prepared to sit with discomfort. Earlier generations did not ask life to be easy before they acted. They acted first and became strong along the way. Strength was not something they chased. It developed naturally because they had no other choice. Their resilience was quiet, steady, and unspoken. When hardship is part of everyday life, the mind adapts without noticing. Patience deepens, endurance strengthens, and confidence grows from surviving what once felt heavy. But when comfort becomes the normal state, even light pressure feels crushing. The difference is not in the difficulty of life itself, but in what the human heart has been trained to expect. Slowness allowed the soul to mature. Life in earlier times moved at a human pace. Days unfolded slowly, not because people were lazy, but because the world itself demanded patience. Messages took days or weeks to arrive. Travel required planning and endurance. Seasons determined work, rest, and survival. Because nothing happened instantly, people learned how to wait without panic and how to sit with uncertainty without fear. Slowness gave the mind room to breathe. When something painful happened, there was time to process it instead of escaping it. When decisions had to be made, they were not rushed by pressure or noise. People thought deeply because there was nothing constantly pulling their attention away. Silence was common, and silence teaches the soul how to listen. Modern life removed this natural rhythm. Everything now happens at once. Answers are instant. Entertainment is endless, news never stops. The mind is always busy but rarely calm. Because there is no pause, emotions do not settle. Thoughts do not deepen, reactions replace reflection. People move quickly from feeling to feeling without understanding any of them. In a slower world, maturity happened naturally. Time forced people to accept reality instead of fighting it. Waiting taught patience, delays taught trust, long journeys taught endurance. The soul had space to grow strong before being tested. Pain was not rushed away. It was carried until it transformed. Today, speed interrupts growth. When discomfort appears, people distract themselves instead of sitting with it. When answers are not immediate, anxiety grows. The soul does not mature because it is never allowed to stay still long enough to understand itself. Slowness was never a weakness of the past. It was a teacher. It shaped people who could hold emotion without breaking and make decisions without rushing. When life slows down, the soul catches up. When life never slows, the soul stays behind, exhausted and underdeveloped. Community was necessary, not optional. In earlier times, life unfolded with a natural rhythm that matched the human heart. Nothing rushed people forward before they were ready. Days were shaped by sunlight and seasons, not alarms and screens. News traveled slowly, journeys took time, and answers did not arrive on demand. This slowness was not empty or unproductive. It quietly shaped depth, patience, and emotional balance. When something painful happened, people could not escape it instantly. There was no constant noise to drown out grief, confusion, or longing. Instead of running from discomfort, they lived with it until understanding formed. Slowness gave emotions time to settle, and settled emotions become wisdom. The heart learned endurance not through force, but through time. Waiting was a normal part of life. Crops took months, healing took weeks. Trust was built over years. Because waiting was expected, it did not feel humiliating or threatening. It became a training ground. People learned that not everything responds to urgency, and not everything improves by being pushed. This created calm minds that did not panic when results were delayed. Modern life shattered this rhythm. Speed became a habit, and impatience became invisible. People now expect quick relief from every feeling and instant resolution to every problem. When answers are delayed, anxiety rises. When progress is slow, doubt appears. The soul never learns how to remain steady because it is constantly being pulled forward before it has settled. Slowness once allowed thoughts to deepen and intentions to mature. Decisions were made with care because consequences lasted longer. Words were chosen carefully because they could not be taken back. Relationships grew strong because they were not rushed. Time did the refining that speed now interrupts. A slow life did not limit growth. It protected it. It allowed the inner world to develop at the same pace as the outer one. When life moves too fast, the soul falls behind, confused and tired. But when life slows, the soul rises quietly into strength, clarity, and peace. Limits gave life. Direction, no one survived alone. Life itself made this clear. Food, safety, shelter, and knowledge depended on other people. Families worked together, neighbors relied on one another, and communities were built around shared responsibility. Being part of a group was not about preference or personality, it was about survival. Because people needed one another, bonds formed naturally. Everyone had a role, and every role mattered. The weak were protected, the strong were relied upon, and the young learned by watching the old. Belonging was not something people searched for emotionally. It was something they lived daily through contribution. When you were needed, your life felt meaningful without explanation. Conflict existed, but abandonment was rare. You did not disappear when things became difficult because leaving the community meant risking your life. This created patience, forgiveness, and accountability. People learned how to work through problems instead of escaping them. Relationships grew depth because they could not be easily replaced. Modern life removed this necessity. Independence became a symbol of success. Technology replaced neighbors, and convenience replaced cooperation. People can now live entire lives without relying deeply on anyone. While this feels freeing, it quietly weakens connection. When no one truly needs you, loneliness grows even in crowded spaces. Today, community is often treated as optional. People join when it feels good and leave when it feels uncomfortable. This creates shallow bonds that cannot carry weight. When hardship comes, many find themselves emotionally alone, not because help does not exist, but because interdependence was never built. In earlier times, community gave people identity, stability, and purpose. You mattered because others depended on you. You were seen because you were involved. When community is necessary, love becomes action, not just feeling. And when people are woven into each other's lives, strength is shared, burdens are lighter, and the human heart feels at home. Faith anchored, meaning beyond comfort. Life was shaped by clear boundaries. People knew what was expected of them, where they belonged, and what their responsibilities were. Social rules, moral rules, and shared beliefs acted like guardrails, keeping life from spinning into confusion. These limits were not experienced as cages, but as guidance. They reduced uncertainty and gave direction to daily living. Because choices were fewer, commitment was stronger. People did not constantly question who they were or what they should become. Their energy was focused on doing their role well, rather than endlessly searching for alternatives. This created stability in identity and peace in the mind. When life has shape, the heart feels grounded. Modern life removed many of these limits in the name of freedom. Now people are told they can be anything, do anything, and live any way they want. At first, this sounds empowering. But without structure, many feel lost. Endless options create pressure rather than peace. People struggle to decide, to commit, and to stay consistent. Limits once protected people from overload. Moral boundaries reduced inner conflict. Social expectations provided clarity. Shared rules created trust. When everyone understood the framework, life moved forward with less confusion and less anxiety. Without limits, modern life feels wide, but shallow. Identity becomes fragile because it has nothing solid to lean on. Purpose becomes unclear because nothing feels fixed. In the past, limits gave life form and stability. They allowed people to grow deep roots instead of constantly drifting. Scarcity made gratitude natural. Faith was not something people reached for only when life became painful. It was the lens through which they understood everything. From birth to death, faith shaped how people made sense of the world, their struggles, and their purpose. Life was meaningful, even when it was hard, because meaning did not depend on comfort. When loss came, it was not seen as chaos. When hardship arrived, it was not viewed as abandonment. People believed their lives were held within a greater plan, even if they did not understand it. This belief did not remove pain, but it gave pain direction. Suffering was something to be carried, not something that destroyed identity. Modern life often reverses this order. Comfort becomes the foundation, and faith becomes optional. As long as life feels easy, meaning feels stable. But when comfort disappears, everything begins to shake. Pain feels random, unfair, and unbearable because there is no higher framework holding it together. Earlier generations could endure difficulty without losing themselves because their sense of purpose was rooted beyond circumstances. They did not need life to feel good in order for it to feel meaningful. Faith anchored them when nothing else was stable. When meaning rests on ease, it collapses under pressure. But when meaning rests on faith, it remains steady through uncertainty. This is why earlier lives, though harder, often felt more grounded. Their strength did not come from avoiding pain, but from understanding it within something greater than themselves. Identity came from responsibility, not display. In earlier times, scarcity was a normal part of life. Food was not guaranteed, warmth was earned, and safety could never be fully assumed. Because of this, people learned to value what they had without being taught. Gratitude was not a practice. It was a natural response to effort and limitation. When a meal came after long labor, it carried meaning. When warmth was found on a cold night, it was deeply felt. Small comforts were noticed because they were not constant. This made people emotionally richer, even when they were materially poor. Satisfaction lasted longer because it was not fed endlessly. Modern life reversed this experience. Abundance became normal, and expectation replaced appreciation. Food appears instantly, comfort is constant, and safety is assumed. Because nothing feels rare, nothing feels precious. Gratitude fades not because people are ungrateful, but because the heart is never asked to wait or work. Scarcity once trained patience and respect. It taught people how to enjoy without excess, and how to stop without guilt. Desire had limits, and those limits protected peace. Today, desire is constantly stimulated, and satisfaction disappears quickly. The more we have, the less we feel. Earlier generations found joy in what arrived slowly and stayed briefly. Modern people chase pleasure that arrives instantly and leaves emptiness behind. Scarcity did not make life miserable. It made appreciation deep, steady, and real. Comfort was earned, not required. In earlier times, people did not search for identity by looking outward. They did not ask who they were based on attention, approval, or comparison. Identity grew naturally from responsibility. A person knew who they were because of what they carried and who depended on them. Work, family, faith, and duty shaped the self quietly and firmly. You were known by what you contributed, not by what you displayed. Respect came from consistency, not performance. A person's worth was proven over time through reliability, sacrifice, and presence, because identity was tied to responsibility. It did not collapse when praise disappeared or when life became difficult. Modern life changed this foundation. Identity is now often built on visibility. People feel pressure to present, explain, and defend who they are. Validation replaces responsibility. Attention replaces contribution. When recognition fades, uncertainty appears. When approval is lost, the sense of self begins to shake. Because identity is performed, it must be constantly maintained. This creates exhaustion. People feel lost, not because they lack talent or value, but because their identity has nothing solid to stand on. Without responsibility, the self becomes fragile and easily wounded. Earlier generations remained emotionally stable, even in hardship, because their identity did not depend on how life felt or how others reacted. They knew who they were because their role remained, even when conditions changed. Responsibility anchored them when comfort disappeared. When identity is rooted in duty and purpose, it grows stronger under pressure. When identity is rooted in attention, it weakens the moment silence arrives. In earlier times, comfort was rare and never promised. When it appeared, it felt like a gift rather than an expectation. Rest came after labor. Warmth followed effort. Ease was appreciated because it was temporary and earned. This relationship with comfort strengthened people instead of weakening them. Because comfort was not guaranteed, people did not depend on it to function. They learned how to act even when conditions were hard. Life did not stop when things felt uncomfortable. Strength grew because movement continued despite resistance. Comfort restored energy, but it was never required for progress. Modern life reversed this balance. Comfort became the baseline. Ease is now expected before effort begins. When comfort is delayed, frustration rises. When it is threatened, anxiety appears. Many people struggle not because life is unbearable, but because it no longer matches their expectations. When comfort becomes a requirement, resilience disappears. People hesitate, retreat, or break when conditions are less than ideal. What once made life easier now makes it fragile. Earlier generations could endure hardship because comfort was a reward, not a condition. It strengthened them when it arrived and did not cripple them when it left. When comfort is earned, it heals. When it is demanded, it weakens.